posture towards Israel's war on Iran is emblematic of how erratic and often incoherent his management style is, foreign policy can be. I mean, when Israel first launched missiles into Iran, we were sitting here at this desk talking to you. Remember that Secretary of State Marco Rubio immediately said, tonight Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. Pretty striking statement from Secretary of State, basically, don't look at us, we're not involved, leave us out of it. But then Donald Trump turned to his favorite TV network, which was blasting him with war propaganda about how effective Israel's attacks were and how great it would be if the U.S. entered the conflict. So according to the reporting in the New York Times and elsewhere, Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran, at least in part, because he was jealous that Fox News was saying nice things about Benjamin Netanyahu instead of him. We're going to have one of the reporters on that New York Times reporter later this hour. And look, the details here of what actually happened remain maddeningly elusive, I got to say. Maybe the strikes were as successful, and Donald Trump claims, and the sort of infrastructure for a nuclear program in Iran is effectively destroyed. Or maybe they were a complete failure, and everything was moved to other locations, and they did essentially nothing to meaningfully set back Iran's nuclear program, which, according to Donald Trump's own director of national intelligence, was not actively building a bomb, to be clear. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. We don't actually really know where it is on that spectrum. And now, of course, we will, according to the president, have peace forever. Forever. It's never going to have war again, which I guess is a good thing, obviously, if it pans out. But again, you'll forgive me being a little skeptical about what's going to happen next. And critically, one has to add that Congress, whose job it is to authorize use of military force, stated very plainly in the U.S. Constitution, never weighed in. Donald Trump did not get its approval before launching the attacks. A State Department lawyer who served under multiple presidents, including Donald Trump's first administration, called the strikes, quote, patently illegal for that reason. In fact, there is a bipartisan war powers resolution in Congress right now, which seeks to rein in Trump's attempt to unilaterally bomb Iran, which, by the way, are on ice right now, but who knows how long that will last. Which is why it's still pretty important, because while there may now be a ceasefire, we just don't know what comes next. As we saw over the past 2 weeks, Trump can change his mind at a moment's notice, sometimes within a few minutes of himself. I mean, he was talking about regime change this weekend, like a few hours after all of his subordinates were on TV saying no regime change. And then he campaigned on no new wars, and then he struck Iran. And then as soon as he struck them, he says, now is the time for peace, but maybe it's a time for war, and then it's a time for peace. So it does seem like now might be a good time for some congressional oversight. According to a tally by Zotio, 52 House members have signed on in that chamber, 51 Democrats, and exactly one single solitary Republican, Thomas Massie, Kentucky, who introduced the resolution alongside Democrat Ro Khanna of California. And Congressman Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna join me now. Congressman, it's good to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congressman Massie, let me start with you. I saw comments you just made a moment ago about the sort of substance of the resolution perhaps being mooted by a ceasefire if there's no active hostilities. So I just want to that seems possible if nothing happens, but I want to put that to the side for a second. And then just ask about, I saw that quote we played in the intro about sort of representing this anti-war part of the coalition, the part of the coalition that did not want new foreign entanglements, did not want American bombs falling on new countries. And given that you're the only co-sponsor of this resolution, do you feel like maybe you misread the coalition? Maybe that wasn't what people wanted, and things are different than you had sort of perceived?
Well, you know, I think the coalition still includes Tulsi Gabbard and J.D. Vance and Bobby Kennedy. But of course, they can't speak out. And a lot of my colleagues, Republican colleagues here in Congress, they're afraid of AIPAC, who is playing in a lot of races recently. That's the Israeli lobby here in Congress. And they're also afraid of crossing our own president. So I found it frustratingly hard to gain co-sponsors for what should be constitutionally obvious, which is the president can't engage in acts of war without authorization from Congress. I mean, even George Bush got authorization for the first Iraq war, and then the second George Bush got authorization for the second Iraq war. This shouldn't be a hard concept to grasp, but apparently it is. And my hat's off to Ro Khanna, who's been consistent, regardless of who the president is, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, for working with me across the aisle on issues like this.
What do you think, Congressman Khanna, of the developments just over the past day and what it does to congressional oversight here?
Well, first, let me just say bluntly, Thomas Massie is a profile in courage. I mean, just yesterday, Donald Trump announced that the senior people who ran his presidential campaign are going to establish a super PAC to try to get Massie out of his seat. Now, Massie has beaten back these primary challenges before, but why is he doing that? The reason he's doing that is not just because of vindictiveness against Representative Massie, it's because he saw that people in the Congress were willing to sign on to the War Powers Resolution, that his own base, Republicans, were questioning the strike, that the oil prices could be spiking. And if it weren't for what Massie did, if it weren't for voices on both the left and the right, I don't think that Trump would get into this position of trying to stop the war. So I appreciate his leadership. Now, we have to wait and see. If there's a ceasefire, that's great. And let's see if it holds. If it doesn't hold, then we're ready to have a vote on the War Power Resolution.
Congress, let me just ask you about what Congressman Khanna was just saying. I mean, you obviously you've taken some votes that really put you on an island. I think it's fair to say a single solitary no vote on that big beautiful bill that was coming through the House. Obviously, on this, I'm not going to read the entirety of this long post, the president, but he said he's called you a simple-minded grandstander. MAGA doesn't know him, doesn't like him, that you think it's a good idea that Iran have the highest nuclear level weapon while at the same time yelling death to America, that you're disrespectful to our great military, that you're a pathetic loser and the like. What do you think of that?
Well, I tweeted his message to me and I said, the president's declared war against me so much, I think he needs an act of Congress to validate this.
I saw that. Sassy with Massey was the hashtag.
In some sense, I have the Trump antibodies, and I do want to point out that this ceasefire so far doesn't mention anything about what our bombing of Iran was predicated on, which is destroying a so-called nuclear program. Well, does this mean that Trump's a party to the ceasefire? He says that Iran and Israel are. I hope the United States is as well, because if it's not, we're going to have to push this through Congress.
Well, that isn't, you know what, Congressman Massey, I will say it. You make an excellent point. Congressman Khanna, that's part of what I'm on air right now. We're trying to process this, and it's kind of hard to have a take because I don't know what we're looking at. Right? It's just totally unclear to me what did the bombs do? What has been agreed to? What are the terms of the ceasefire? Is the U.S. a party? Do you feel like you have eyes into this?
No, there are a lot of unanswered questions. We don't even have a consistent statement from the administration. I mean, the vice president is saying that they still have nuclear fuel to make 10 bombs. Well, if that's the case, then what was accomplished? And, the reason that there should be caution is if it comes out that Iran actually is still able to build a nuclear bomb, and if that comes out that they have that capability in 6 months or a year, is Donald Trump then saying we're going to go bomb again? Or has the capacity really been destroyed? I'm dubious about it. And then what happens in terms of Iran's commitment? Are they going to expel all the IAEA folks? Are they going to get out of the NPT, or has Iran committed to having those inspections? So there are a lot of unanswered questions. I would just say that the voices on the left and the right, it's not just Massey and me, but those voices, those anti-war voices, have made a difference because it's sort of Trump was listening to both sides. He's getting all the neocon advice in the Beltway, but then he's also hearing from the anti-war voices. And I think today, at least, the anti-war voices are winning out. We'll see tomorrow.
Let me just follow up on that. Do you think that I mean, I think there's triumphalism I've seen among the sort of portions of both parties' coalitions that wanted this. Newt Gingrich declaring there was never isolationist anything, and this is what the Republican Party stands for. Everyone's psyched about this. But Congressman Khanna, you're saying that you think that political pressure at least is playing some kind of role in the calculations here.
Absolutely. I mean, look, Thomas would know better, but when you have Steve Bannon out there, when you have Tucker Carlson saying that Donald Trump's presidency is over, when you have some of the people Theo Von is talking to who voted for Trump saying they never signed up for this, you know, the one thing Donald Trump does do is pay attention to public opinion and certainly to the MAGA base. And there was a large uprising of folks speaking out. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, she didn't get on the resolution, but there were a lot of people in Congress who were very, very uneasy with this.
Well, but let me ask you that, Congressman Massey. I mean, in some way, there's sort of an interesting ideological question here, which is like, is there some sort of coherent set of ideological principles here that are around limiting U.S. involvement in foreign wars and approaches to immigration and trade that make up something that's like identifiably a political tendency? Or is it just what Donald Trump says? Like, if he announces like a big new era of free trade tomorrow, like, I guess that's MAGA then too, right?
Well, listen, I'm more of an ideologue than a populist, I'll admit that. But at least if you're an ideologue, you know what your ideas are. And with populism, you can blow in the wind. The thing is, you know, there's this coalition among libertarian-leaning Republicans and independents, and even a few Democrats joined with Trump to get him elected. But part of the deal was no new wars that drag on forever, and we're going to put America first. We're going to worry about our infrastructure. We're going to worry about our immigration. We're going to worry about America first, you know, taking care of seniors and veterans before we go overseas looking for dragons to slay. And I'm worried that in the first 6 months here, we've already sort of gone astray of what was one of the basic principles of putting America first.
Bracketing for a moment whether I think that was what was being sold to people, just to put a pin in, this question, I mean, there is this sense, right, and I've seen this on this issue in particular, where I think if you look at the polling, and we'll show some of it later, and if you talk to like random people are like, why are we doing this? Like, there was not, you know, there's a huge effort to lay the groundwork rhetorically. But the closer you get to Washington and the closer you get to the American security apparatus, the more people are like, actually, this is pretty good. And like, do you have why that is?
Look, I've seen it under Democrat presidents as well, and some Democrat members of Congress. Roe's obviously excluded from that, but when their party's in power, they're for the next war already. You know, I'm against Ukraine and the war in the Middle East, okay? And I know that's Russia's war. I know that's Russia's war against Ukraine, but I'm against the next war already. And at least, you know, there are a few people here who are consistent and don't sway in the wind when it's your president or somebody else's president. And I'm just trying to be consistent here in this